Hi everyone, and welcome to the Birds of a Feather session for 12D Synergy. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Richard Stollier, and I'm the technical lead for 12D Synergy. During this Birds of a Feather session, we will be covering general information, more detailed concepts, and doing some demonstrations of the product. So we'll be covering specifically data management, 12D model management, and project collaboration with 12D Synergy. We will then follow up with some questions and answers. But overall, you can expect this to be a more detailed overview. So at the end of the day, 12D Synergy is meant to be easy to use, but it has many different levels of usage, from a beginning user through to an advanced user. So there's a lot to cover, and we're not going to be able to cover it all in these sessions, but we'll try to cover the things that we think will give you a good picture of the system. So let's talk about the architecture. This is an overview of the architecture of 12D Synergy. On the left-hand side, we have the 12D Synergy software sitting on a server within your office, or it could be a data center. And on the right-hand side, we have all the different types of clients that can connect to it. So this could be a 12D Synergy client program, or Outlook, or Excel, or Word. And these can be people connecting from within your office, such as a drainage engineer or the design manager. Or it could be somebody working over the internet from home if your IT infrastructure allows you to connect from outside. Now, it's important to note that security is really important to us, and whether you're inside the office or out, the data is secured with state-of-the-art security and encryption. We also have an offline mode which allows you to access your 12D Synergy data when you're working out in the field, and we'll talk about this in a little bit more detail later. So just a brief note about the structure of a job within 12D Synergy. Everything sits within a container called a job. And this has a variety of different things inside it, like collaborative elements like forums and tasks, but it also has other jobs, folders in a traditional Windows Explorer-like structure, which can include files and 12D model projects, and so on. And you'll see this in detail as we go through this demonstration. So when you connect to 12D Synergy, you can do it in several different ways. You can do it with the 12D Synergy client, which has a Windows Explorer-like look and feel. You can do it with the 12D Synergy administrator, which is really for administration tasks only, and only people who are given administrative rights will be able to use it. There's a command line tool for batch operation and scripting. And then there are a number of products which have plugins such as 12D Model, Microsoft Word, Excel and Outlook, and even some CAD application like BricsCAD and AutoCAD. So very briefly, let's talk about what happens when you work with a file in 12D Synergy. So when you open a file, it's actually downloaded to a local reserved area on your hard drive, which is called the workspace. Now you can always view your workspace with Explorer, but it's important to note that you're only going to get a copy of the files that you need when you need them. So if you're not working with a file, you're not going to get a copy of it. And you're always going to have the latest copy of that file delivered to you. If there have been no changes, you won't be delivered anything new. Because this can take up disk space, we do have a data cleaning utility which can come through and clean up that based on a number of different rules, such as whether or not someone has used the file lately, or the file is small enough that it would be negligible to download it every single time. So what happens when you check in a file? Well, the file is stored on the server, but it's not stored in a traditional file format. This means it's protected from random access by other people trying to use Windows Explorer and not use the system. It's important to note that only the differences between versions are saved, and this is at the byte level. So if only 10% of the file is changed, then that's what's stored on disk. So this saves on disk space. Now it's important to note that we do recognize that you may need to give this data to a third-party client, or you may need to store it off-site in a different format. So we always give you the capability to export that data back into a format and a structure that you would expect and that can be used as normal. We are now going to talk about project collaboration with 12D Synergy. We're going to start by looking at the task list within 12D Synergy. And these can be as simple as a to-do, such as record this demonstration, with no other details. Or they can be quite complex and can help drive your business workflow. So let's have a look at a task. A task can have a name, it can have a priority, such as low, medium, high, etc. and it can have a state, such as not started, in progress, or closed. It can also have an assignee, but tasks can be assigned to users, to groups, or to roles. So for example, to a design engineer. So that if the design engineer changes over time, if you have turnover or people go from one job to another, the tasks are automatically assigned based on who fills the role, not on a specific user. And this is the most dynamic way to create tasks. You can also set up tasks to depend upon one another, such as saying, the design can't start until the survey is completed. You can also have a variety of different dates. So you can have a start date and a due date, and these can be set up in lots of different ways. You can have a fixed date, which is a specific date in the calendar, or you can set up relative dates. So it could be, the due date can be relative to the start of the task. So this is due 7 days after it starts. Or it could be relative to its parent. So this is due 7 days after my parent task starts. Or based on the dependencies. So this is due 7 days after the last dependency finishes. So I have to do the design 2 weeks after the survey has been completed. Alternatively, you can do it off the date the job has been created, and we'll talk about that in a little bit more detail shortly. You can also set up actions. So let's go have a look at our task here. You can say, when all my dependencies have closed, do something like change the state. So when the survey is completed, automatically start the design task. Or send an email. And this way you can make sure that the right people are notified as each part of the project proceeds. Alternatively, when the task is due to start, you can send an email or change the state as well. So as something is due to begin, again, the right people are notified and your workflow can continue. You can also set up associations, which we talked about previously. So you can associate a particular task with a file or 12D model project or other item within 12D Synergy. And this makes sure that as you work with these items, the tasks continually pop up to remind you to make changes, to continue to report on what you've done. You can also set up a variety of different reminders. So remind me 5 days before this task is meant to start. Or perhaps remind somebody because they haven't started the task yet and they were meant to start it a couple of days ago. Alternatively, remind someone before it's due, or remind them after it's due if it hasn't been closed. And you can tell it to remind you, the assignee, the person who created the task, or other important stakeholders who might be interested in knowing what's going on. So there's quite a bit of information that can be included in a task, as well as having the task history, so that any time you make a change, you know what's happened to that task. And you can of course get reports on this, so you can have a look at what's changed over time. Now we also have task types within 12D Synergy. It's very likely that you have common things that you do. One particular piece of work involves several common steps. So in this case, you can create a task type, which is defined by your administrator. And we have some here that are shipped with 12D Synergy, like some tenders and approvals and so on. But let's have a look at a really simplistic design workflow. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set the date, the start date as today. I'm going to assign it to myself and click Create. Now what's happened is it's actually created a set of tasks, and you'll notice it's got all the dates and so on, because all the dates have been set up as relative from the parent dates and from a variety of different dependencies which have been pre-set up within this task type. So for example, do the design is dependent on adding the survey data, but the date is set relative to the last dependency, and it's set 2 weeks later to be due. So you can set all this up so at the moment it's created, all these tasks are created, they can be assigned to the right people for that job, and all your dates and reminders and everything can be set up right from the start. You can also set up attributes, so if there's more information you need to capture, such as a review state, what was the result of this review, that can be required before you go to the next task within your workflow. Now you'll notice we talked about transitions. such as states like not started, in progress, and closed. But not every task might have these states. You might have something else. You might require an actual review state. And it also makes sense that you can't go straight from not started to closed. You might have to go through review first. So you can control this within your task types. So you can only progress from not started to in progress, and from in progress to review, and then either back to in progress or to closed. So these transitions are completely up to you. You can control how that works. Now the other important feature in tasks is how they link into job templates. And we saw job templates in the data management section of this demonstration. When you create a job template, it's likely that for a design job or a survey job, you have standard operations. If you create a task type and create that in your job template, these can be automatically created every time you create a job. And in fact, you can set the date based on the date that the job is created. So the moment that job is created, every single task that you need to do is set up correctly with all the correct start and due dates and assignments. And in fact, in some cases, you can set up customization, which can, for example, look at an accounting package. So that if all your jobs have to go through an accounting package, the moment they're approved, 12D Synergy can detect that, create the job, create your folder structure, and create all the necessary tasks and assignments without having to do anything at all. Now there are several different task views. You can have a look at the tasks just for this job. You can have a look at your tasks only. You can have a look at tasks within subjobs. But there's also an option to look at all tasks within the entire system. And you can do a search and say, show me everything that a particular person has to do right now, or show me everything that they've got that is overdue, and so on, which gives you a really nice overview of what's going on in the system for every job right away and very quickly. Let's have a look at some of the other collaborative elements within 12D Synergy. So for example, we have forums, which allow you to communicate with people within a job. And these are pretty simple to use. They look like any standard internet forum where you can reply and communicate with one another. You can even link to items within 12D Synergy just to make sure that people are aware of what's going on. You can also watch topics for replies so you're kept up to date when someone posts, or you can let people know about important posts. Alternatively, you can leave notes like post-it notes on almost anything in the system. So for example, on my progress report here, there's a note here that says there's still some work that needs to be done. So I can reply here and stick another post-it note on there about my progress, and I can let people know that it's there. Alternatively, I can also subscribe to notifications about things I'm interested in. So I can say, please let me know when a file is added to this folder, or let me know when another folder is created or a file is checked out. There's lots of different things you can do depending on the type of element you want to be notified about. And of course, you can also let people know whenever you make a change by simply referencing a person within the change description that you supply at check-in time. Now, it's very likely that at some point you're going to want to give some data to someone who doesn't have access to 12D Synergy. And in fact, you don't want external contractors or stakeholders to have the 12D Synergy client and to wander through your job structure. In this case, you can actually publish data. And this makes data available over a standard web browser. You can simply set up a link for them, and as soon as they open that link, they'll download the file. Now this can be restricted in several ways. You can make it only available until a certain date, you can set a password, and you can also get it to send an email straight to this person so that they can then be tracked. As soon as they open the link, it will keep a record of who has downloaded what file, how many times, and when. You can also specify a download page, so you can put all your logos and any additional information that you would need to be displayed to a person who is consuming some published data. You can also publish a set of files as a zip file. We also have a document transmittal record system within 12D Synergy called issued files. It's likely at the moment, if you're doing document transmittals, you have an Excel spreadsheet which tracks who was sent what file, which version, and when. But 12D Synergy can do this for you automatically. So you have some categories or some file sets, and these are largely cosmetic and defined by the administrator, but everything is broken up into a file set. So we're going to do a transmittal now. I'm going to select the files I want to be issued, and I'm actually going to go pick a PDF plot. So there might be other files, there might be multiple sheets, but in this case I'm just going to send one. I can see which version of which file I want to be issued. So at this point I can simply issue it. And now I have to fill out some additional attributes. And these are again defined by the administrator. This is something that my administrator feels necessary to track for a particular transmittal. So in this case it's for approval. I then have to pick the contacts that I'm sending it to. So I'm going to send it to my client. And I'll click issue. Now it asks me how I want to do it. I can do it manually. So for example, I might need to print it out and then send it via courier, but it's still important to keep track of the fact that it was done. I can send it via email, either have 12D Synergy do it automatically, or do it via Outlook, or I can publish the file so it's available over the internet, and the contacts will be sent an email to tell them that these files have been issued and waiting for them. In this case, I'm just going to do it, let the server email it for me. I can then add an extra description. I can zip them if necessary, and I can click email. And it's important to note that any emails that are sent, such as these issued file emails, can be completely customized, so all your logos and so on and contact information can be included. At this point, 12D Synergy is asking me if I'd like a receipt, which is just information to tell me or other people who need to know that files have been issued. I'm going to say no at this point, and the file is then issued. So I can have a look, and every time this file set has been issued, a record is kept here. I can see all the attributes that were picked. I can click View Details and see who issued it, when it was issued and why, which files were done, and I can have a look at the notes. Alternatively, I can actually go have a look at these particular files. And I can see here the versions that were issued of this file. So whenever I'm moving around 12D Synergy, I can, without even having to look at the transmittal register, I can see which files were issued and when, and I can quickly navigate if I want more information to go and have a look at that particular transmittal. There's also a report that can be generated as a transmittal sheet to show you what documents were transmitted and when and to who, really simply. I'm now going to talk very briefly about customization and implementation of 12D Synergy. It's important to realize first of all that all outgoing emails are customizable, so you can brand them however you need and you can control what information appears in them. So if you need extra information about your own internal processes, they can all appear within your emails to make sure people are kept up to date about the information they need to know. Now we have a complete customization built into 12D Synergy, and that gives you complete control over the server logic. So you can react to changes and do things like send emails when a task has been added or a file has been checked back in, or you could feed it into another script if need be. You can validate changes to make sure that changes are allowed to occur. So for example, before a file can be checked in, make sure that it's gone through the necessary gates and review statuses before that can happen. You can perform regular operations over your data, like generate reports, or you could use it to synchronize with external packages, such as an accounting package, to feed into creating jobs, or for publishing extra information to other data systems. We have a full API available for use. It's a little bit like the 12D model macro language, but it uses Microsoft.NET, so there's a wide variety of tools and functionality available. Now when you're implementing 12D Synergy, the package first of all comes with seed data, which contains ideas for job structures and templates. These are our recommendations to you for things like attributes and how you might structure your jobs, as well as some basic task templates to get you going. But defining your data structure can take time, especially if you don't have an organized data structure to start with. But you can always start using 12D Synergy and change the data structure later. It's important to identify one or two people who will become system administrators to control that data structure, so that not everybody is doing everything. That way you have only one or two people who know how it should all work and have control over those changes. But it's important to realize that getting your data in is really as simple as a drag and drop operation. And 12D Synergy can even detect things like 12D model shares, so that if you drag in 12D model projects that reference each other, those shares can be kept up to date and automatically mapped into the 12D Synergy format. Thank you very much for watching this 12D Synergy Birds of a Feather session.